Maybe just before I move into my panel and I introduce my dear panelists, just a quick word about Deloitte and about big data. So for those who may ask why Deloitte is on this subject, so why are we positioned on the art and finance topic? Just to give you a brief overview, so 15 years ago when I started to look at this subject, so we have seen major trends affecting the art market ecosystem. We believe that the combination of all those trends are really, really unique in the sense that this has never happened before. And of course, so one of the topics today is big data. Frédéric mentioned tech. So this is for us a very, very important subject. So technology have reached a level of maturity that we think this is going to dramatically impact positively the art market at different levels, risk management, experience, and so on. Now, on the Deloitte side, so we are positioned on this art and finance ecosystem. How do we define this art and finance ecosystem? It's basically three sectors. One is finance, the financial sector, mainly family offices, private banks, insurance companies, the one that are dealing with collectibles and the wealth that are allocated to collectible. Not for investment, but more to protect this wealth, to monetize this wealth, transfer, and to give this wealth. The second pillar for us is the art businesses, where you also find the art tech companies. And the third pillar is the cultural sector. As I mentioned before, all the trends that we have seen just before are affecting those three sectors. Usually people tend to look at those sectors in silo. Or they look at finance, or they look at culture, or they look at art business. What we try to do is really to be positioned in the center and to understand how those three sectors can interact and be better off by increasing their relationship. And of course, when we talk about art and tech companies, they clearly have benefits for the financial sector in terms of risk management, but also to the cultural sector in terms of experience, just to give a concrete example. I will not go further into what we do on the Deloitte Art and Finance, but just for your info, Deloitte is not at all positioned on the transaction. So we don't organize buy or sell of transactions. We don't provide valuation. Our role is really to try to understand this ecosystem to provide consulting, tax, and audit services. In order also to be a bit more kind of wiser and to understand what are the developments, pitfalls, interesting challenges and developments, what we do is that we produce every 2 years, more or less, this little report that is called the Art and Finance Report. This report has been presented at our 12th Art and Finance Conference that took place in Monte Carlo 1 month ago, just a little bit before Jean-Baptiste's baby was born. And we're very happy that, of course, Beaux-Arts was also, and Le Quotidien de l'Art was one of our media partners for this conference. Thank you again for that. And so in that report, so what we try to do is to analyze the transformation of the art market by serving collectors, art professionals, and also wealth managers, private bankers, and family offices. This report, you can download it for free, so this is the webpage where you can have access to it. So this is really part of our mission, if I may say, to try also to educate and to explain what's happening in this art and finance landscape. We cover always more or less the same sector, the same sections in the report. So art and collectible wealth, art markets, trends, art and wealth management trends, art and estate planning, art secure lending, art as an investment, art and technology, which is the panel of today, and also regulation and risk management. And I just want to focus a little bit on this one, because this is really related also to data. And when we look at regulation and risk management, so we can see that from the survey's results, so this is not at all a Deloitte point of view, we really try to be neutral and independent. We collect data from those surveys, and what we notice is that there are a lot of numbers of issues, from authenticity, lack of provenance, lack of transparency, price manipulation, lack of title register. And you can see from here, well, you cannot see anything, but at least you can see the level, so more or less. So this is 80%, so more or less, from collectors, wealth managers, and art professionals. So there's a kind of a consensus around those risks. And when we ask questions about data, do you trust data? What level of trust do you have in the art market data, qualitative and quantitative? This is the answer. Art professionals, collectors, and wealth managers. So we have also an issue on data. So that's, I think, it's a kind of a good transition point to move into my dear panel, so that I'm going to briefly introduce. Where's my sheet? So I start with Sophie Neuendorf, so from ArtNet. So Sophie joined ArtNet in 2012. She's the director of ArtNet's Gallery Network, a platform for the world's leading galleries, and she pioneers ArtNet's partnership program with art fairs, financial and cultural institutions. And we are also very happy that ArtNet contributed in the report in terms of indices, and we will probably talk a little bit about indices today also. We have Alexandra, and honestly, her last name, so she authorized me not to try to pronounce it, but I will try. So Artamonovskaya, more or less okay. So thank you, from .art. So she's director of partnerships at .art. So she gained experience working across galleries, auction houses, and fair before becoming part of the core team that launched .art in 2016. She currently oversees its UK operation with a focus on strategic partnership. As part of .art's launch, Alexandra produced a series of videos interviews with key players in the art industries that explore the importance of building a strong online presence. And she's going to talk about data and online presence today. We have Dorit, Strauss, just arrived from New York. She already enjoyed Leonardo da Vinci show yesterday, lucky you. And so she has over 30 years of experience in the art market. She's been an important contributor to the fine art industry as underwriter, manager, and innovator. She was one of the key members of the Getty Institute Object ID project, creating universal criteria for describing artworks. Until her recent retirement in 2013, she was worldwide fine art manager at Chubb, little insurance company, very big insurance company. In 2016, Dorit was nominated by President Barack Obama on the Cultural Property Advisory Committee at the US Department of State. And in 2018, she joined Wonder AI, artificial intelligence, as a senior advisor and ambassador to the financial services industry. My last panelist is Pontus. She was already there last year, if I remember well. So also Silver Stoppel, is that correct? Kind of, sorry for that. And of course, there's plenty of names that are going to be very difficult to pronounce. So he's the co-founder and head of content at Barnaby's. So he's formerly a director at Lila Bukowski's, correct, and a curator at Amelie's Art Trade. So Pontus founded Barnaby's in 2011 with Christopher Barnekow, correct. He also hosted Antiques Detective, a TV show, and is a contributor to several Swedish art publications. As head of content at Barnaby's, he is responsible for the editorial content on multiple platforms and write about the art market and its trends. So those are my panelists. So in order to cover this subject, Mike, yeah, okay, it's back. So our title is Big Data and New Tools for the Art Market. So how did we prepare this panel? We wanted to make something that is as useful as possible for you, as practical as possible for you. Of course, when we talk about big data, we can cover many different subjects. So we take a kind of a different approach to be very kind of down to earth, very practical. So they will each of them present during 5-6 minutes, and I will jump on their back if they speak too much, more than 5 minutes or 6 minutes, to try to explain basically what the company does, what their company does, what is the data universe that they cover, How do they make sure that the data they use are correct? So we have all this issue about trust. What kind of analytical tools they have developed and what you can do with it. And when is necessary, maybe if they can say a word about the cost of using those data. So this is what we will do. So during 25 minutes more or less, so they will present each of them. So their presentation, we will start with Sophie, Alexandra, Dorit, and Pontus. From there, we will move into some questions on my side, and we will open the floor to your questions. So think already about your questions. I hope you are fine with this, the way we do that. And I will just ask now Sophie to start with her first presentation. Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you, Adriano. It's a pleasure to be here today, and I hope this works. Well, bear with me if it doesn't. Before we move into big data, I just want to take us back about 30 years to give some context, at which point we were actually flipping through catalogs to look at or find the data in order to ascertain future prices. So this was a very tedious process, which is why 30 years ago, the birth of ArtNet, we decided it would be a good idea to compile all this data and at first send it via fax. Shortly afterwards came the birth of the internet. So we put all of this data, including images, online, which made everything a lot easier, all of our lives much easier. Now, this has led to about 1,800 auction houses sending us their data and about 7,000 auctions every year, at the moment we have about 13 million artworks online, including all of the data. So this gives us a breadth of big data that is unimaginable. This data has increased the amount of knowledge, trust, and transparency in the art market and really opened it up to a lot more transactions. After this data was put online, we created 2 new products. One of them was the Art Analytics Reports, which will give you a deep dive into all of our data and will enable you to really research everything, and we will work with you and customize it in order for you to, does it work? In order for dealers and collectors to really look for everything they need to know. It will provide you with information on the liquidity, on the supply and demand, on auction results, and everything you need to know. There's also another product which we provide you with, which are market alerts. You can subscribe to a list of artists, and you will find an alert whenever one of these artists appears in any online or brick-and-mortar auction, and this will really enable you to be very informed about any type of art market movements. So this is a look at the standard artist report.
Oh, the one before.
No, this is perfect.
This is perfect.
Yes, this is perfect, thank you. So this is a look at the standard artist report. You can see that you can get a real look at the appreciation or depreciation of any one artist over a number of years. And we will work and customize these reports for all of our clients. Thank you. Technology is working perfectly. Okay, yes, this is the future, absolutely. So these are our advanced artist reports, and as you can see, it goes into a bit of a deeper dive into the data that we provide, and you can really get a look at where artworks are sold, which artist is coming to market at any one time, what the liquidity is like, and we will really work hand in hand with you so that you can get an absolute look at your collection or any artwork you want to buy or sell. And this is for wealth managers, it's for private collectors, it's for dealers, it's for whoever wants to have a real look at the artworks that they're at any one point in time wanting to ascertain the value of, buy or sell. This brings me to the end of my presentation, and there's just one more thing I would like to reveal, which we are working on at the moment, which I'm very excited about, and these are indices. We're taking a look at synthetic derivatives, which will enable you to invest in any subsection of the art market, and you don't actually have to buy an artwork. You can just invest into a movement of the art market. We're working with an algorithm we provided in-house and which we are developing at the moment, and I'm very excited about this because we're hoping to bridge the gap between the finance and the art market, so from a very regulated space to a very opaque as yet quite unregulated space. I think this will really transform the way we look at art and the way we invest in art and make a new possibility for our clients and for anybody interested in getting an entry into the art market with low barriers and lots of liquidity. Thank you.
Thank you, Sophie. So this is really a new news. So definitely, so that's really an announcement. So thank you very much, Sophie. So
Sure.
and those synthetic indices or derivatives. So those are kind of will be issued in 2020 early.
Yes, I'm guessing 2020, early 2020. We're still working with. Or still trying to ascertain which providers we want to work with, and there's some decisions we have to make internally, but yes, 2020.
So please note your agenda, but that's really something that's never been done before, so really looking forward. Next, move to the next one. So Alexandra, so floor is yours. So, and so if we can have slides.
Hello.
Thank you.
All right. Can I just say next slide? Thank you, Adriano. Thank you, Sophie. And thank you for having us here today. So for some of you, you already know that art. For those who don't, we work on helping galleries build a strong digital presence online and communicate with their audiences in a meaningful way. This includes commercialization, and big data has allowed us to do so. So today I'll talk about a couple of the initiatives that we're doing. So first of all, we identified a problem that's often present in the retail world of brick and mortar. Your sales are dependent on your foot traffic, and your foot traffic is dependent on your location. Why is this important when it comes to digital? Well, when it comes to digital, if you want to reach your audiences, you have to be online, because your audiences is also online. The level of your engagement with your audiences depends on what you can control. So many of you are using social platforms like Instagram, Facebook, maybe something else. These are all really important. Many of us are using it. Some of you might be using it right now. However, this is not the ultimate solution. Why? Because these platforms control the communication, the level of communication you can have with your audience. They dictate the terms on which you can present your brand. While it's important to having your own website allows you to centralize your traffic. It also allows you to define the brand on your own terms. So how did we address this issue? Next slide, please. Oh, actually, could you go back for a second? Oh, okay, perfect, thank you. We created a neighborhood where all of our residents share a similar commitment of building an artistic community and having their brand resonate with art. However, as building any community, we realized that there are certain standards that need to follow. We have to name our streets, we have to name our townhouses. Also, we realized that since the art industry is not always the first adapter of new technology, it might be vulnerable to cybersquatting. Cybersquatting is basically speculators online that try to grab valuable names and then resell them to you for several times the price. Maybe some of you experienced this before. So how did we deal with this? This is where the big data comes in use. We created .art's big data algorithm. This algorithm was made by analyzing offline and online resources, 150 million names in different languages were analyzed. This is about 100 times more than the corpus of the whole English language. Based on this, we created 20 parameters and ranked each name by popularity. Some of the ranking parameters would be how many times the word was searched on at Google, or how long is the word, and its relevance to art and in the frequency of art texts. The result was that we were able to fulfill our mission, giving the right name to the right hands. But also we created a barrier for the cybersquatting community not to be able to speculate. It was also an opportunity to build the basis of our premium domain names. So what was the next logical step now that we have this tool? Next slide, please. Thank you. We decided to look at the art market. And the existing methodology, the existing structure of the reports out there doesn't change much over time. However, the industry itself is undergoing a tectonic shift, a shift towards digital. So we decided to do a little test. We received a list of different art fairs, online institutions, artists, from researchers that developed the annual art market report for Art Basel. Next slide, please. Thank you. These are some of the categories that we looked at, which would be interesting. What we decided to do is to rank the online presence of each of these players in the art market. However, big data, AI, all these cool technologies, they are not obsolete. And we realized that a human factor had to be involved. Certain indexes and parameters had to be manually adjusted. A simple example of this, if you look at artists, we added a parameter, social media, which technically all of us would think is important for an artist's presence. However, how do you measure the online popularity within social media for deceased artists? They can't they can't run their own Instagram account. So this is where we had to manually lower that factor and focus more on the Google searches or references in our texts. When it came to living artists, we would still consider these. Next slide, please. So this is where things go into a little bit more detail. The methodology would be as follows. If we take an artist, we would break down, for example, Pablo Picasso, we would break down the name into several different names. Then we would run each of these keywords against the factors. Based on that, we would make a quantitative ranking and deliver the results. I think, next slide, please. The best way to illustrate it is to show you some of the results that we found. This is a sample data, the top 39 companies that were ranked based on this system. So some of the obvious findings you can see is Amazon and eBay being on top of that list. But things are interesting when it comes to arts institutions. So Katawiki, which was presented earlier today, outperformed...
She was paid by you.
This is not a promoted post. Katawiki outperformed Artsy. Artsy, all of us know Artsy, but there were more people searching for Katawiki when it came to Google searches than Artsy. But because our ranking didn't look only at Google searches, it also looked at social media, it also looked for direct traffic, it looked at 14 different parameters. Artsy is still higher on this list. And maybe some of you can see your companies there. I'd be happy to talk more about this and share some findings after the panel. But I think the most important part of this, it shows how important it is to have a holistic approach when it comes to measuring the online presence of different companies. We need new tools that would help to navigate the market, and we made the first steps to deliver those tools. Next slide, please. Thank you. I would almost say that these days, if you're not online, you don't exist. And as dramatic as this sounds, if you want to be exposed to research, if you want to be mentioned in publications, if you want to increase your digital footprint, it is important to use and to take into account not only social media, not only one certain outlet, but many different outlets. And we'd be happy. This is an experiment. We're still in the R&D phase of developing this ranking, and would be happy to talk to partners about this. But we hope that this can serve as a tool to measure the impact of your online project. And next slide. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexandra. So so today, if we want to be on that list, so we need to have a .art domain name, I guess.
No, you probably have to be suggested by researchers, but I mean, we are happy to work with anyone. To even actually to have a look at what kind of names are there, you just type vip.art and you can see that the algorithm will be showing you, unique different pricing for different brands.
Thank you very much. So this is another avenue of course, big data, very important, especially when we talk about online presence. So thank you very much, Alexandra. Let's move now to data and artificial intelligence. So Dorit, so floor is yours. So please tell us more about Wonder and what you try to achieve with Wonder. What you have already achieved with Wonder. Yeah.
Can everybody hear me? Is this on? Okay. Well, I grew up in the allied art industry. Is it okay?
Closer.
Closer, okay. I grew up in the art allied industry, which is the insurance world, after a career in museum curatorial work. But it was a time where everything depended on personal relationship, and all information was based on personal connections and networking to get your information. And I can't reinforce what Sophie had said about how revolutionary and innovative was the introduction of ArtNet, which made our life a lot easier, particularly in the insurance industry, to verify valuations and so forth. But today it's a different world, and the art world, as mentioned before, has changed dramatically. It's a global industry. It's no longer Eurocentric or New York-centric. Creativity is all over the world, and with a plethora of artists and exhibitions everywhere and everywhere. So how do you keep up with all of that? How do you track emerging artists all over the world? How can you determine value where there's no auction results and dealer information is not available? How can institutions respond to diversity issues, address issues of bias in the art world, and collect works by relevant artists of the community? Next slide, please. Well, Wonder can provide some of those answers. And what is it? A lot of us have heard about artificial intelligence, and a lot of people are aware of artificial intelligence because it's somewhat sinister sounding to it. But basically, it's a very helpful tool. And what Wonder AI does is analyze the dynamics of value creations and biases in the art world in real time, anywhere and everywhere. It compares the careers of contemporary artists based on non-transactional metrics. It's an objective analysis of historical drivers of art value, achieving it by collecting and verifying data from many sources globally to provide imperative research on artists and institutions. And the data is sourced from over 50,000 public and proprietary sources, building on an enormous database for the global art market. And it collects and verifies in real time millions of art market signals, private and public, that drive changes in value. Next slide, please. So who are the people who work for Wonder? Well, because it is AI-driven, there are very seasoned senior researchers in AI and biology from the University of Toronto and from MIT. And so it's able to provide a mine full of data about artists, museums, and public institutions, all available in seconds, and it's available on your phone. In addition, there is, because this is an art platform, there are art professionals who are also involved in vetting and reviewing the material that's coming in to validate and provide a cultural validation based on other things other than just sales numbers. Next slide, please. So with a powerful data engine built with about 8 layers of data, and I'm not a techie, so I'm not going to get involved in providing you all the different details. It's like the internet. You want to know that it works. You don't want to know how it put it together. But with a powerful data engine, Wonder is able to compile and distribute in real time millions of verified art world facts concerning about 95% of all post-war and contemporary artists. The data can be sliced and diced by recognizing patterns in the careers of hundreds of thousands of artists and measures the impact of bias. And I'm going to go back to the discussion of bias. What it does is provide and recognize cultural acclaim for artists depending on their career levels globally, and also by region. So artists are categorized as either emerging artists, mid-career, established, and high growth. There are many, many models, a series of AI models that help understand the art world at a global scale by measuring over 250,000 artists, and this list continues because it's a continuing operation, that are born after 1900 and over 27,000 institutions worldwide. The result that Wonder has created is really mapping the art world ecosystem that provides a window into artist trajectories, growth evolutions of value, institutional influence, and global trends in the art world. Through the AI platform, one is able to recognize certain institutions that really help artists in that trajectory. One of the elements, as I said before, I'm going to go back to bias because it is a very important subject that we all talk about, including the movement of decolonize the museums, is the question of bias. And it's become a key aspect of Wonder's research. By focusing on biases, we hope that it'll push further the discussion as well as the action plans to correct this imbalance in the art world. Next slide, please. So what do we do today, and who do we help? Well, I'll start with my own industry, which is the insurance world. It really has made a revolutionary change for us, and we already have several insurance companies who are using it, and insurance brokers, in directing their attention to valuation, either undervaluations or overvaluation. Instead of asking people to provide them with updated values every 5 years based on their list of items that they own, which is really an exercise that sometimes is futile because it's not really necessary to get an appraisal on every artist or contemporary artist within 5 years. Basically, through utilizing of the Wonder research, one can look at artist trajectories and then just ask for those artists whose growth has exceeded, their percentage growth is so much greater that it's necessary to reevaluate that. So it's an intelligent solution and a win-win for both the clients who don't have to spend money on additional appraisals that are unnecessary, and for the insurance company to sound like they know what they're doing and that they understand the art world. So we have both insurance companies and fine art insurance brokers who are in direct contact with clients to look at the increased value rather than a blanket one-size-fits-all solution. Another industry that has sort of embraced our concept is the art lending, who are also sometimes doing advisory, and getting that data is helping them in analyzing artist trajectories and which artists to advise for or in their lending side of things. And last but not least, we've seen real acceptance by museums who see the benefit of tracking their collections as well as comparing their acquisitions to other institutions. That helps them in collaboration as well as to distinguish themselves from one another. So I think these are just a few of the applications. The more I look at it, the more I see that there are other utilities and which are, endless possibilities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dorit. So what I think is very interesting... Sorry. So, Dorit, so what is interesting is that this exists, this is live, you have users, you work with insurance companies, and I would say, are you a disruptive force? So there are certain numbers of potentially appraisers in the room, so how should they see you? As a threat or a partner?
I think they really do need to look at us as a partner, and many of them have seen that. We're not looking to disrupt. We're a force that is helpful from within the art world, because what it does is provide, if you talk about appraisers, it gives them the information so much more quickly in other than having to compile every artist and where they have exhibited and where what their sales have been like. It saves them so much time. So in the end, it saves them the cost of that time of research. So I really don't see us as a disruptive force. We're really a helpful source. We're working from within the market to help change the market or to provide additional data information.
Thank you, Dorit. So let's now go for our last speaker. So Pontus, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Sorry. First of all, happy to see you again. I was here last year, and I had a very good time. Thank you for that. So what is Barnabys? Barnabys is the world's leading search service for art, antiques, design, and collectibles, which means a painting by Picasso, Ferrari cars, coins, stamps, also a nice bottle of wine from Bordeaux. Okay, what do we want to do? We want to keep things simple. When I started in this industry in 1995, I've been working in one way or another since then. I think I understood and spoke the language of the business quite well. But 8 years ago, when we started Barnabys, I came across words and, words that I never heard about, like SEO, KPIs, CTO, DMO, Bitcoins, and last but not least, data. And since we like to keep things simple, I think, to me, data is information. And as we all know, we already work with data, all of us, I think, because information, well, we have client information, we have the bidding history, for example, that we use to work with for an auction house every day. So all this information we already have, but they can be refined or analyzed And in that way, we can create more value from that data. And that value is, of course, different depending on if you are an auction house or a gallery or a journalist or a shipping company or an insurance company. So if I can get my first slide here. So, sorry, there's one before, yeah. So how does now Barnaby's use the data that we have, and what kind of data do we have? Well, if we go to our service, we are a search service that lists about 500,000 to 1 million items every day that is live for sale from 2,000 clients, dealers, auction houses, and galleries. What you can see here is the other day I made a search for Charlotte Perriand. Right now we have 51 items on site and 2,525 sale results. We have the world's largest price archive. We have about 93 million items that you can search from. And now that is what we provide a user with. This is free of use. But what we then do is that we filter the search by countries, categories, price, etc. And from that, we can get data from our user that we see, for example, what categories are the most common categories to search on. And is that online or is that traditional auctions, for example? We can also see the gender or the age of our user. This, of course, differs depending on what market. This is France, and as you can see, it's a male, it's a he, and he's about 55 and he's collecting. In Sweden, it's a she, she's about 35, she loves interior design. But also, we like to add another layer on this, and that is when we do our own reports, and then we make a survey, and we ask our clients or our user what to expect. And what do they really want from the business, from the auctioneers? Well, the easiness to bid. So think simple is the key. Okay, so now if you're a client of us, an auctioneer or a dealer or a gallery, what can we do for you? Well, we created something called BITE, Barnaby's Intelligence Traffic Engine. That is our own Google Analytics, so to speak. So what we do here in BITE, we provide our clients with this kind of data. For example, what items are they clicking on at Barnaby's? Because then you can see if you have any Sleeping Beauty there. So you can actually marketing that to the right market, as you can see down here. If that is the traffic on that certain item is coming from US, why not put up a banner display on Barnaby's to promote that unique item? And you can, of course, see also what categories, etc., people want to see. Okay, next slide. But now the user has the tool, the client has the tool, but since we're not a platform, we can't actually track our traffic all the way to the purchase behavior. So this spring, we will provide the market with a pixel. So we can actually track that traffic all the way to the bids and the purchase and member signups, etc. So you really can see the benefit of our traffic. Since we started in this business, or with Barnaby's at least, 2011, we always aimed for a modern new auction system to the industry because what I've seen, no one is actually accurate and up to date. So after all those years, we haven't seen the proof yet, so we decided to actually do our own. So this year we will launch Skeleton here in France, which is an auction system, white labeled. So you keep your data, you own your data. And that data can be seen in this way, for example. You got the bid time, when people are bidding, so you can see when you should promote that item on the site, if it's the Korean market or if it's the Japanese market or US market that wants to see this. You have, of course, what item to bid on. You have the bidder's name. You have the bid type. Is this straight bid or is it auto bidding, for example? You have the amount of the bid, and of course the IP address, so you can actually track them. Where are they? Who is this bidder? So once again, I think the key to actually use the data that is by me translated to information to make it easier is to keep things simple. Thank you.
Thank you, Pontus. Stay with me. Yesterday when we talked, sorry, I should have known before, but you told me that you now own also Value My Stuff.
Yes.
So can you tell us a little bit more about this valuation system? So because this is also data-driven,
Yeah.
How does that work? So and what is the quality, if I may say, of the results of this valuation system?
Yeah. Well, I think since the market is global nowadays, you have Barnaby's, you have other sites that show the market to you. It's not about actually finding the buyers in that sense. It's the key for the auctioneers, at least, and the dealers today, is to get inventory. And how to get inventory. So we acquired Value My Stuff, the world-leading valuation service online. And we do that to help people, of course, to evaluate what they have at home, but also to bring more items to the market, because that's key to make the whole market increase. And we got numbers from US saying that 2 to 3% of the antiques and art market. No, sorry, not. What do you say them? What people has at home.
Collectibles.
What do you call it? Well, actually, furniture, whatever. But just 2-3%